Hi there, my name is Calvin Rice, and I'm here to share a bit of my testimony today. I know that listening to some testimonies through my journey helps me to relate and feel less alone. So I'm hoping in some way that me sharing what I've been through can do the same for others. I have had issues in my life from quite a young age, issues with addiction and faith. And I in no way blame anyone else other than myself for the decisions and the choices that I have made in my life. Okay, so basically where I want to start my journey is from the tender age of 7, where my taste for the other side of life began. I was introduced to alcohol at the age of 7. I had my first beer when I was 7 years old. I wasn't necessarily a troubled child. I didn't have a bad upbringing. I was never at a want or need for anything. I was always cared for, in a house full of love. And then as I started going through towards my puberty years, I started to experiment with cigarettes and harder alcohol. I was caught drunk for the first time age 13, 14, off of hard liquor such as whiskey and brandy and vodka. I started smoking weed and cigarettes from age 13, 14 as well. Prior to that, at the age of about 10, my parents decided to get a divorce. I didn't necessarily think it was my fault. Most kids end up thinking, oh well, what did I do? Why is this my fault? I never really thought that of myself until I went to therapy. The therapist was like, this isn't your fault. And then I started to kind of think, well, maybe it is my fault. But after that, I kind of started to rebel quite a bit, leading up to starting the harder liquor at age 13, 14, smoking, being a bit more rebellious, challenging my authority. And then going through high school, mingling in the wrong crowds, trying to fit in, being a part of the social norm, per se. I started to experiment with harder drugs as well. Age 15, 16, I was onto ecstasy and cat and cocaine. I actually ended up getting suspended from school in grade 11 for 2 or 3 weeks due to smoking weed. In those last 2 years of high school, I withheld from smoking weed, but I also kind of sought out more therapeutical help, which is where I was diagnosed with ADHD, high levels of anxiety and clinical depression, which I was medicated for. Medication to help me through that, help me focus in school, help me deal with this feeling of detachment and from being able to fit into society. Skipping forward a little bit to after high school, I decided to take a gap year to kind of find out who I was, which entailed applying and working overseas in the States. So I went and I worked for a camp as a counsellor, teaching the kids activities. I ended up messing that up because now I'm out of school, I'm left to my own devices, and my old tendencies to go and drink and use came back. So I ended up coming back to South Africa. I started working in pubs and restaurants, and that's where my introduction to a more harder type of life, always on the go, always trying to keep up, not only with other people, but work and with the lifestyle that I was leading, which was partying all the time, working all the time, trying to find a balance somewhere in between. So that's where my habitual using just to keep up with everyday life kind of came from. And then that would obviously lead to losing jobs and floating from one place to another, still introducing myself to the bad crowds. And after a while, I actually started selling drugs while using drugs, which obviously made it more readily available. So I was selling to support my habits as well. Things like weed, ecstasy, cat. Just after my 21st birthday, I actually got yellow jaundice due to liver and kidney failure from abuse and overconsumption of alcohol and drugs. And then after that, I tried to give up drinking for a while. And then came COVID, and that started to become yet again a bit more habitual. And in the following months, I developed sort of like a mouth ulcer. I went to the doctor for help, gave me a couple of rounds of antibiotics. Eventually nothing worked. So he decided to do a biopsy, sent it in for testing. Came back, he called me into the offices and said, we need to sit you down and have a discussion. And he said, this is stage 2 squamous cell carcinoma, which is a cancer. In the months to follow, I sought help of specialists. Ended up getting booked into Albert Lutuli. They had to test for COVID, and and if you had COVID, they couldn't operate within 6 weeks. So they tested me, I got my results back, I was positive for COVID. So I came back 6 weeks later and it had progressed to late stage 3 cancer. I went in for my operation, which is where I spent 13 and a half hours on the table. Thereafter I spent 2 days in ICU, 5 days in high care. I went back to the ENT ward for 10 days, which is, I was then let off, sent back home. Then following that I went and I did 30 days, 6 weeks of radiation therapy, which is directed straight into my mouth. Where I lost, it was 60% of my taste and 40% of my smell. And all function pretty much of my mouth. I could hardly speak, I could hardly, my emotions were up and down. I had to do physical therapy to learn how to speak again and try and become as close to normal as what I could. And obviously this took a huge impact on what I thought about myself, my appearance, the way I sounded. So basically, after all of my issues with the cancer and all that, leading up to that point, there had been many times that my life was just about taken away from me. I knew that there was something keeping me alive. And I believe that my faith, which was very rocky, started to solidify a little bit more. With family and friends all praying for me, I knew that had to come from somewhere. It's not just man-made, that's something spiritual, something stronger than just your physical presence holding you to this life. This led me to the realization that with all my drug abuse and the cancer, I needed to make a change. Hence why I sat down with my parents the one day after many, many issues. We agreed that I needed to attend a rehab facility, my first rehab facility, which was Harmony Retreat up in Greytown, where I met amazing people, an amazing life coach and counsellor, and he helped me deal with a couple of things that I didn't realise were affecting me from a young age. I did my first stint at rehab, which lasted about 5 months. I came out, I started to try and live a normal life again, but it didn't take that long before I started to use again. And in that time of me using, I lost my grandmother, who was very close to me, who I had made a promise that I would change my life. Shortly after that, I lost my job and crashed my car. Again, I just have a sit down with the family, and I said, listen, I need to go back to rehab. And the second time I did 9 months, but in that time I started to work for the rehab, doing deliveries, running support groups, kind of being the go-to guy when people needed to have a chat about something or need to offload something, which gave me a sense of higher purpose as well. So I finished off at rehab, I came back, and that's when I got an opportunity to follow a passion and a career that I had never really explored, which was becoming a barber and doing male hair and grooming, such as hair, beards, the full deal, as well as being a tattoo artist. So starting my own business from where I was, where I could barely keep one job, now I'm running a job, my own job, doing hair and tattoos, and also working a third job to try and help, like financially wise, run my other 2 jobs. I owe a lot to the support and the love of my family. A part of my journey through all of this is how Norwegian Settlers has actually played a big part is through the Project Exodus group, not just from the support of addiction side, but also from a spiritual side, having it being a Christian-based program. It provided me with a safe community, somewhere where I could go and feel comfortable amongst other people who are also suffering with the same issues of addiction that I was. And because of the community that it gave me a sense of belonging. A big thanks goes to the Lord. So where I am now is I haven't arrived. My journey is still continuing. Every day I'm just trying to do better than the day that I did than the day before. Trying to grow and learn in every aspect, learn from the church, learn from my elders, learn from people that have also gone through the same situation that I have. That's all I can say really is thank you to my family and thank you to the Lord.